Well, we officially know what our next set is going to be called. Yep, that's right. They didn't give us much information, but we do know that we're going to expect Omens of the Third Age coming this summer. And of course, there's already speculation about what heroes, what classes are going to be in a set like this with all the galaxy stuff. And of course, with Look to the Stars being the tagline we see after the title screen here. But that's not necessarily what we're going to talk about. We are going to speculate about that. Do keep that in mind. But I want to highlight something that I think is oftentimes overlooked and underappreciated about Flesh and Blood. And that is the storyline and the lore that they have built up over the course of, the entire time the game has been out. Because one thing that I think is often underappreciated about the game is that this is a game that has had the staying power and test of time has been stood by Flesh and Blood on the back of its own IP. So we are going to highlight what this is going to mean both for this set and how I think it's going to snowball into the third set, the final set of the year, which we can all assume at this point is going to be the conclusion of the Monarch storyline. So if you have no idea about any of the lore whatsoever, here's some guided reading that I can present to you, and you can learn about it. Starting on the Stories page, this is on the Heroes tab of the Flesh and Blood website. So if you go Heroes and you go to Stories, you can find this page that we're going to be citing quite often and sort of explain where the story is and how this set, the Third Age, and how all of the pieces are going to fit nicely together, I think, to pad out and lead us into the Monarch conclusion, the War of the Monarchs conclusion. For those that don't know, you can go all the way back. This is a fairly new feature to the website. You can go all the way back and get all of the storyline from the very beginning of the game, which is kind of fun. Like you can go and see Dorinthia's story, you can see Bravo's story, you can get Ira's story, and so on and so forth. Of course, Katsu as well. But we are going to pick up with the storyline. There's so much that you could actually dive into, but let's start specifically by understanding what the Third Age is. And here is a fantastic summary over here on the Battle of Eisenloft. This is Jarl's portion of the storyline. As we scroll down, you can see Jarl here. The story is pretty cool, but this right here is why we're here. In the Third Age, the Old Ones spread across the land, an invasion beyond understanding, beyond the reality of those who call Rathe home. Cities fell, civilizations were consumed. Beleaguered refugees gathered to the remaining ancients, elemental titans of the natural order. And at 3 of humanity's remaining bastions, the brave held their ground. Alden Grove to sustain them. By the way, Alden Grove essentially is the grove where we see Candlehold, I think, take root. It happens after that. Spoiler alert, there's a death, and then Candlehold sprouts up. Alden Grove to sustain them, Valahai to empower them, and that is where most likely we are going to be seeing the setting of this next set take place. It is up in Volthaven. Again, because of a death, Volthaven now exists. And Fierce Eisenloft to guard them all. And this story talks about Eisenloft. It involves Jarl, and it involves Oldham, both of which were frozen in time, literally and figuratively frozen in time, while they were battling the Old Ones. Now, who are the Old Ones? Well, I'll go deeper into it. I don't have this one pulled up, but let me just kind of give you the nitty-gritty. I'll bounce back over here. When we get the sort of genesis story of Flesh and Blood and the world of Rathe, we see that humans have somehow come to this world, this land of Rathe, through perhaps another plane of existence, or maybe they just sailed there. It could be that as well. It's not really specified, but they find this beautiful, lush world. Unfortunately, they soon discover that it is under the control of the Old Ones, also known as the Aesir. It's spelled A-E-S-I-R, and that is referenced in multiple areas in the lore, which we can talk about. But the Aesir are essentially not good guys. They're not good. They are the Old Ones in the true Cthulhu-verse style. They have all dominion and power, and there's this massive battle between the Old Ones and a large group of people and a contingent of other creatures as well, including the Ancients, which I'll bounce back to this screen and I will show that here. The Old Ones answered the attack with an otherworldly howl that echoed across the mountain peaks and drove many a frightened mind to the brink of madness. So it is truly like another plane of existence level threat, right? Avengers style level threat, right? And if we go all the way, I think this is all the way at the bottom of this. Yes, at the very bottom of this, at the peak of the story. If you don't want spoilers, if you want to read it for yourself, skip this part. But at the peak of the story, in the Battle of Eisenloft, you have the Ancient, which is the elemental of ice, called Galcia, which is just so hard to say because you want to say Glacia, but it's Galcia. Galcia sacrifices itself and unleashes all of its white, cold snow and energy that then immediately blasts everything, both friend and foe, in an effort to prevent the Old Ones from overcoming the I don't know what you want to call them, the resistance, if you will, Star Wars style, overcoming them. And so it freezes Jarl, it freezes Oldhim, and it freezes all of the evil creatures that were under the control of the Old Ones as well. And if you want more storylines about what these types of creatures are, you can actually go to Trouble in Larynthmorth. I have this certain spot pulled up right down here. But just really quickly, I will show you. This is Trouble in Larynthmorth. This is the Valda storyline. And Valda, it obviously takes place in the present day of Rathe, but there's this giant Ice Howl style creature. I'm pretty sure it's the creature literally on the Ice Howl card. In any case, it doesn't really matter. It is killed by Jarl, but not before the entire town of Larynthmorth is almost laid waste, right? Laid waste. And Valda's like, what in the world is going on? You chase the Ravnir here. Ravnir, this is the creature that kind of tears everything up. Jarl is just walking around like a total badass, just killing this thing. Unfortunately, he's also crushing everything involved, which kind of ties in with what he did in Battle of Eisenloft. Nevertheless, she asks, where these things came from. I had this spot sort of picked up. Let's see if I can figure out where it was again. Here we go. Listen, the Wayfarer, keep that in mind as well, slung his bow around his shoulder. Listen, we did what had to be done. The Ravnir was from the time before, unfrozen with Jarl. And I bring this up to point to the fact that over the course of the storyline in the present day of Rathe, we've started to see things unravel. Things have become more unstable. Obviously, Jarl and Oldhim are awakening, but they aren't the only ones that are waking up, I should say. Overall, the flow in Aria, for those that don't know, Aria is the land that we've been in multiple times. We were there for Everfest. Of course, this Bravo is there. We were there for Rosetta, and presumably we're going to be there again as we approach the new set, the Third Age set. And there's a force within this one region of Rathe that kind of sweeps through and remakes everything as it goes by. So if it was a mountain and the flow sweeps through, all of a sudden it could be a river and the plains, right? Or this is really unstable when it gets up to the northern part where Volthaven is, and everything becomes, I think they call it the shale or something like that. Everything becomes even more unstable and cracked, and lightning and mountains just split open randomly. There's always a perpetual storm, and this is all happening even worse. And the veil that protects Aria from the outside world of Rathe is now waning, and things are kind of going crazy there. But they're also going crazy in Volcor. And if you read Kano's storyline, there's there's a secret group of what appears to be zombies or necromancers that have started to take over the bodies of high-ranking officials, and the then alive emperor sends Kano, who sniffed out the fact that there are a bunch of these people that have infiltrated the entire proceedings of the government. He sniffs this out. He kills a bunch of them. or at least he kills a couple of them. And then he becomes the Drokai of Aether, the Drokai of Aether, because the Emperor recognizes that something is wrong with the magical force called the Aether, and it is unstable, and they can't control it the same way they used to be able to control magic. So all of this is happening worldwide in Rathe, and they're trying to find an answer. And one group of people that attempt to search for an answer can be found in a very, very old story back here in 2021. This right here, if you really want a good setup for what we're most likely going to be seeing in this storyline, you read this story right here, and maybe a splash of this story as well right here. A Grand Adventure and The Wonders of the Wayfarer. These are the two stories, and specifically A Grand Adventure, that really sets up what they lay the groundwork essentially for the storyline, and this is where I think they're going to continue the storyline from here. And not only that, I think they're going to continue the storyline from this point forward into Monarch 3. The War of the Monarchs is really where things are coming to a head, where the Aesir, these old ones that have been slumbering in various locales, are now really truly awakening. And without again going on another diatribe, the Demonastery, which are the bad shadow guys everyone sees as the bad guys, are essentially thinking that in order to save the world from the Aesir, they first must harness enough power to beat them. To do that, they have to go to a mirror dimension, and they have to sell their souls to demons. Probably not going to work, but they got to do that. Then they got to get enough power to fly their entire building up and over Volcor into Solana. Sorry, guys, I'm just going off on a tangent here. They got to fly over to Solana. Then they got to kill Solana because, spoiler alert, the god of Solana, Sol, is probably an Aesir. Okay, that's the storyline of Monarch. So the bad guys think they're the good guys. The good guys might be the bad guys, but they're all probably been deceived because another ring was made and the fires of Mount... No, that's a totally different storyline. In any case, they're probably both wrong, and they're probably both going to end up somehow fighting on the same side, even though they are literally killing each other in the most brutal way possible. Alongside of that, though, and right before that takes place, this storyline kind of sets everything up, okay? So, first of all, wayfarers are... specialized like navigators that can navigate their way through the constantly twisting and turning nature of, I think it is called the shale. I'm just going to call it that. Correct me down if I'm not. They can navigate through the constant shifts and turns of the environment because of the unstable flow and how it's changing things. And Lexi Livewire is a wayfarer. Also a wayfarer of note is Aurora, and we'll talk about her in just a moment. But if you want a really good explanation of why things are going crazy, or at least a start of an explanation of why things are going crazy, read this article, this storyline, because it is really fantastically written by Cash. I really enjoyed it all the way back in December 25th. 2021. Merry Christmas. But go through this entire thing and you start to get a lot of you get a lot of details. And one of the details that you will get is that there's a vault in Enion that ends up being uncovered here in Volthaven. Lexi with her merry band of friends, including but not limited to our only, well, not our, I can't say our only bard hero, now one of two bard heroes here, Yorick. They discover this passage that has been covered by rock for whoever knows how long, and it turns out there's a vault behind it, and of course the thing swept through and cleared it, so now they find it on Yvor's Peak, and this ties in, by the way, to the same battle that happened in Eisenloft. Eisenloft was sort of under the protection of Galcia. The entire area of Volthaven is under the protection of Ivor, and Ivor ends up dying, and the instability that is created, I think, through Ivor's death in the Third Age creates this ripple effect, and things get even crazier. I think that's the case. Nevertheless, we discover in this cave this really cool looking set of runes on this door. And I think these are actually translatable, and I think they have been translated. So leave a comment down below if you know if they've been translated. I'm pretty sure they have. Nevertheless, they find a way to, or they're trying to find a way to open it. And in order to open it, they have to go and find, and I'll scroll down. Oh, that's right. Oldham is in here. And Oldham, hey, there's Oldham. Huh? He wakes up. They all set off, along with Oldham and Lexi and the rest of the gang. They set off to head down to find a group of secret wizards called, I believe they're called the Maela. Let's see if they're at the bottom here. This is a long story, by the way. Here we go. Where they think they're hidden is actually at the Everfest Carnival. And this was all set up leading up to Everfest, and then we got nothing. We got literally nothing. It sucked, bro. If you were into the lore, I was so hyped. We got nothing, okay? Because the thought was, I think it was the Maela that, it doesn't even say. Let's see, Maela? Maybe I'm just making that up. But there's a secret contingent of wizards. The seers, they call them the seers here. Okay, so they meet up with Oldham and they meet up with Briar on a way down there, and they talk to the then alive Queen of Candlehold, who eventually is of course going to die in Rosetta. But they talk to her before she has sort of reached that point where she knows that she's going, and they were like, "Hey, the seers, they're hidden." And they're hidden at Everfest, and you got to go check in with them because they'll be able to tell you more information. They'll be able to get you into Inyan's vault, you know, that sort of stuff, right? So they are looking for reasoning as to why all of these things are starting to wake up. Of course, Oldham himself is also wondering this. Briar, the first of her kind, the first of the Rosetta to leave Candlehold. Things are all changing. And not only that, but you kind of combine that with the awakening of Acilio as well, who says the exact same thing. Acilio is discovered by another wayfarer in this upper area of Aria, and that, of course, would be none other than Aurora, who we know is going to be returning in this set. At the very least, she was set to return, or said to return, around this time of the year, and so it makes perfect sense that she would return right along here. Now, the interesting thing here is that Acilio says that he was created by the Aether scribes, also known as the perhaps wielders of the Aether bindings of the Third Age, and these symbols do look maybe similar to the ones that we see on here. Like, we could see some similarities in runic shapes to the symbols that we see, of course, here being created by the Aether scribe of perhaps the Third Age. And the Aether scribes created him, and you can kind of read what he expounds upon. He doesn't say a ton, but he does see that there's unusual fluctuation in the flow of Aria, meaning that things are not as they seem, and an exceedingly powerful surge. Only the most powerful surge could have awoken me. You must accompany me as I seek its origin. So everything is starting to go haywire, and this all coalesces alongside of the murdering of the Emperor. And you think, why would that even connect? But this is something that I think a lot of people haven't really understood. The Emperor is the Drakai of a seer, okay? Drakai is sort of a title like wielder or like specialist, and he is the Drakai of a seer before he is killed. And this picture right here actually depicts this moment that we see here. Muffled whispers scratch at the glass. The Emperor is all too familiar with those insidious promises. They are the sovereign's blessing and his curse. He has listened to them since he was a young man, long before he took the throne from his father. Today, he wishes they would be silent. With a supreme act of will, he turns his back on the altar and empties his mind of the susurrant temptations. Is that susurrant? Susurrant? I think it's susurrant. He crosses the chamber to where the imperial crown lies in its bed of velvet and remembers how it felt the first time when Chancellor Yama placed it upon his brow. Now, the overarching theme here is that he's being whispered to by the awakening Aesir deep within the heart of the volcano in Volcor. Okay, so essentially there is an Aesir for every region. There is an old one connected to every region, and the Aesir here has long been asleep, but perhaps has been whispering to the Emperor. Now, he was assassinated, and there's some implications within this story in the One Emperor that the Emperor almost, in a way, acts to contain, perhaps, or hold back the Aesir in some way, shape, or form. It's not really said implicitly, but it is implied throughout the story in just slight ways. Maybe I'm reading into it, but it kind of does seem that way. So there's an Aesir there. There's, of course, some Aesir action back in the Third Age that we can even see in card art, if I can pull that up really quick. Let's just go ahead and pull up Fabrary. If we pull Fabrary up and we just go to the old ones, all of these are moments of the old ones being defeated, right? We saw these in Guardian Mastery Pack, which, of course, also, I want to point out, tie in to the connection that a lot of this battle, or maybe major portions that we're talking about of this battle, happened in Aria, because you can see these are sort of all, very elemental in their base. But the old ones themselves, the old ones are the ultimate antagonist. And of course, the War of the Monarch, I think, is going to reveal this happenstance that it turns out that Sol, the Solana god, is essentially an Aesir that has been deceiving them for eons, perhaps even since the humans arrived there. And these Aesir are all starting to wake up, and it's going to perhaps become a situation where we fall back into us versus the old ones. And by us, I mean literally everyone. We're talking like a nexus point event where everyone realizes that whatever you have against the person next to you pales in comparison to utter annihilation and obliteration. There's a lot of these types of little hints throughout the storyline, like when we see, these heroes that start to interact with each other. Of course, we can even go all the way to, 2023, I think it was 2023, with Unity in Light, the storyline here that talks about the battle essentially between the Demonastery and the heroes that kind of come together. As you can see, Yorick with Oldhim and Bravo Star of the Show. This is after they make their way to Bravo, and they all perhaps discover that they need to go and help in the fight between Solana and the Demonastery, and they're helping Solana against the Demonastery. This one ends on a bit of a cliffhanger, as you would expect, where it turns out that, I don't know if they have a picture for it. No, maybe that's on the next one. But it ends with a cliffhanger, this storyline does, where Levia essentially becomes Levia consumed and finds a way to brute force break through the magical shield that Solana has around it, the city itself, and begin all the hordes, the countless hordes of the Demonastery begin to pour through, and the heroes that are all left hunkered down in the actual city itself have to either make a last stand or choose to go through the dimensional gateway that I think they learned how to open and go into Rathe, which is the mirror dimension where the shadow heroes sold their souls to the demons called Imbra. Okay, so that's the point that we are getting to in Monarch 3, I think. That's where they're leading us to, but I think we may have sort of a 180 and at some point realize that all of this is culminating in a battle between humanity and the old ones, or the current generation versus the awakening old ones, and if they can stand against them or if they will all fall together. Now, who do I think is going to be in this set? I think obviously Aurora. I think there's a lot of people that are saying Lexi as well. I think that would seem like a great idea. If they're going to be maybe picking up with like a new storyline, or like trying to kind of carry it off where it is, Lexi's technically in that fight against the Demonastery, so it could be that they just, like put the characters in the set and maybe this is telling like a side story at some point. But Aurora is most certainly in it. So if it is not a side story and they are telling that story, maybe it isn't Lexi, And instead, we don't have the re-release of 2 heroes. Some people are saying like Lexi, Icelander, and Aurora. And honestly, that would be cool to do, where you get 3 heroes that are all coming back at once. Everyone gets their old hero back in a sense. But I do think that they want to imbue the game with new faces and new heroes to fall in love with. So I am going to cross my fingers, and I'm going to start the Hopium train right now and say we're going to get classic constructed Blaze, because it makes a total sense to get a wizard. Wizard plus Runeblade, very similar to what we had in Rosetta, which was, I would say, a successful overall limited play experience. Draft and Sealed were both pretty fun to play, in my opinion, but I am quite partial to Wizard myself. So I do want to hope and pray that we get a really cool Wizard hero, Wizard versus Runeblade, but I do think they are going to give us at least one more class, and it just makes sense to get another Wayfinder, another Lightning Lexi style hero. Do they give us Lexi again? I don't know. It also would make sense if we're getting Ice and Lightning for them to give us Icelander too. We do also know that Icelander, Dromai, Lexi, those heroes all kind of went around the same time. It was Lexi first, and then it was Icelander, and then Dromai followed suit maybe like 4 months later. So do we get them all around the same time? We know Dromai's coming out 2027. It's a real kind of toss-up of what we get. So I'm curious to hear what you think down below. And if this was way too long and too ranty about the lore of Flesh and Blood, please tell me that in a comment below. Look, for all 12 of you that made it to the end of this video, you're welcome. For making another lore video. I really love this stuff, and I really would love to see them do more lore, because I think they were telling great stories, and we just haven't had as much of that. I think the creatives team are top-notch people, and I would love to hear more from them and to really appreciate more of this side of the game, because Flesh and Blood has truly stood the test of time, not just because it's a great game, but because it has its own IP, and because it can lean into that, and it can go the direction that it wants to. I think that's really, really cool. And if you're out there also thinking that this lore is pretty cool, let me know that in a comment below. And of course, make the number go to the other number. As always, everybody, thanks for watching.